Until her final breath, Part 3. Chapter 17, The Life She Never Lived. The next morning, the sky would not rise. Not because of clouds. Not because of storm. Because time itself paused. The frost in the grass held still. The light did not shift. The ravens did not fly. And in the cathedral where Myraelin had remembered Myrae, even the wind refused to move the petals she'd carried home in her sleeve. The hourglass was silent. The ash, still. And that terrified her more than the visions, the flames, or even Velmora's voice. "Rhysand," she said. "Something's wrong." He stood at the edge of the broken nave, staring into a window that no longer reflected light. "I feel it too," he said quietly. "The chain is hidden." Why? Because it was never meant to be found. They left before dusk and traveled to the only place not marked on any map. The place Rhysand had always refused to take her. "You said no part of your past frightened you," she reminded him as they reached the edge of the dead valley. "This part does," he said. She looked at the twisted trees that curved inward, creating a dome of silence. "What is this place?" "It's called the Hollow of Names," he said. "Where souls erased by Velmora still echo." "Then that's where we go." He didn't stop her. Inside the hollow, the air felt heavy. Thick. Not with magic, but with absence. No birds. No insects. No wind. No sound at all. Even their footsteps made no noise. And everywhere she looked, Myraelin saw shapes, but not things. Just the outlines of what once was. Benches without texture. Statues with no faces. A stone wall with a doorway carved in, but no room behind it. "Why is everything incomplete?" she asked. "Because this was her favorite form of punishment," Rhysand said. "She didn't kill you. She unwrote you." They came upon the grave at the heart of the hollow. It had no name. Just a mirror laid flat where the headstone should be. Cracked in a perfect spiral. Myraelin knelt beside it. "This is mine, isn't it?" Rhysand nodded. "The eighth life," he said. "The one Velmora stole completely. She called it the unlife. I don't even remember what you looked like. I only remember, you were kind." "Kind? You forgave her once." Myraelin froze. "I forgave Velmora?" "Yes," Rhysand said. "And for that, she destroyed every trace of you. She swore she would make sure no one could ever remember your name again. So how do I remember it now?" "You don't," he said. "That's the trap." She touched the spiral mirror. And the world collapsed. She stood in a white room. No windows. No doors. No sound. Not darkness, just nothing. No identity. No sensation. Not even the weight of her own body. She was floating. She was frozen. She was no one. "Where am I?" she whispered. But there was no voice to answer her. Just a flicker. Then. A child's laughter. A woman's hand brushing another's hair. A song with no melody, hummed across a fire. And finally. A whisper. So faint it could have been her own breath. "You were called Myraelin." The name cracked the room in half. Light surged in. And with it. Pain. The memories didn't return in flashes or fire. They came in cold, like water filling her lungs. Myraelin. The life of stillness. Of healing. Of forgiveness. The only version of her that didn't fall in love with Rhysand, because she loved everyone. Equally. Gently. Without possession. A priestess of peace. Who once took Velmora's hand and said, "You are not evil. Just broken. And I forgive you." And for that, she had been erased. Myraelin collapsed. The mirror cracked beneath her touch. And the void around her screamed, "You don't get to come back." Velmora's voice echoed. "You are nothing. You are silence." "I was everything," Myraelin whispered. The wind returned. The light bled through. And from the shatter point in the mirror rose a single symbol. A white rose. Cracked through the stem. Myraelin stood slowly. Rhysand was beside her again, his hand extended. "I remember her," she said, voice hoarse. "She was quiet. She was kind. She was stronger than both of us. And now," he said, "she is you." She took his hand. The seventh grain rose in the hourglass. And the ash turned white. That night, Myraelin lit a candle she didn't know she owned. Set it by the window. And whispered a name for the first time in centuries. Cerulean. Outside, the wind shifted. And somewhere in the valley of unwritten names, a girl with no face smiled. And whispered back, "Thank you." Far below, Velmora's throne began to crack. And her hands, once untouched, burned. "You're losing her," said the voice in the dark. Velmora turned slowly. Her eyes now shadowed. Her mouth bleeding gold. "Then it's time to do what I swore I never would. Which is end him." Chapter 18, The Blood That Cannot Die. They didn't know it had begun. Not at first. The morning was calm. Myraelin woke in the ruined chapel with sunlight on her skin and Rhysand's cloak around her shoulders. The air smelled like new leaves. Distant bells rang from the town far below the hills, echoing softly through the stillness. For a moment, it felt like peace. Too much like peace. "Something's wrong," Myraelin murmured, sitting up. Rhysand was gone. Not just out of reach, gone. "Rhysand?" she called. No answer. The pendant at her neck, once alive with subtle heat, now lay cold as stone. And the hourglass? It was still. She followed the trail, twisted soil, broken twigs, and dried petals, through the edge of the woods and down into the ravine where Rhysand had often gone to be alone. But when she reached the clearing, everything was wrong. The trees were blackened. The ground was scorched. And in the center, Rhysand knelt, his coat torn, shirt blood-soaked. His hands bound in vines that pulsed like arteries. His eyes closed. His breath shallow. Standing over him, Velmora. "Step back." Myraelin screamed, summoning every ember in her soul. Velmora didn't flinch. She turned slowly, her dress tattered now, her once flawless skin scorched with cracks of gold and ash. Her eyes burned, but not with power. With desperation. "You're too late," she said softly. "It's done." Myraelin rushed forward, breaking the vine ward with a pulse of fire that scorched the grass in her wake. She dropped beside Rhysand and touched his cheek, ice cold. "What did you do?" she breathed. "He made me a promise," Velmora said, stepping closer. "Long ago. A deal I never intended to collect. But tonight, I did." "You're lying." "Am I?" she said, tilting her head. "Ask him." Rhysand's lips parted. A whisper, barely audible. "She took it." "Took what?" Myraelin asked, pressing her hands to his chest. "What did she take?" Velmora knelt across from them. "His immortality," she said. Silence. Myraelin's hands froze. No. He offered it to me, Velmora said. Centuries ago, in another life. In exchange for your soul. He bartered his eternity so you could keep coming back. Myraelin turned to Rhysand, eyes wide. Is it true? He coughed, and blood stained his lips. I thought I'd never pay it, he said weakly. I thought she wouldn't find a way to collect. Velmora smiled, but there was no triumph left in it. Only bitterness. It was always going to end like this, she said. You, broken. Her, alone. Balance restored. But Myraelin stood. Slowly. Steadily. Not in sorrow, but rage. You think this is balance, she said. You think taking his eternity unravels our bond? She stepped forward, fire rising beneath her skin. You tried to break me with death. With memory. With love. And now with time. She raised her hands, palms open, flames curling around her fingertips. But I am more than 12 lives. I am more than pain. And he is more than his immortality. He is mine. The fire surged. But it didn't burn Velmora. Instead, it wrapped around Rhysand's body, cradling, healing, breathing life back into him. Velmora recoiled. That's not possible. You took his curse, Myraelin said. But not his vow. What? You never understood the bond, she whispered, stepping closer. It wasn't magic. It wasn't blood. It was choice. He chose me in every life. And now I choose him. The fire entered Rhysand. His body arched, light flooding from his eyes, his chest, his throat. He screamed. The vines turned to ash. The sky fractured above them with a thunderous crack, as if time itself were screaming. And then silence. Rhysand collapsed, breathing hard. But alive. Eyes wide. Still mortal. Still his. Velmora stumbled backward. You rewrote the vow, she said, voice trembling. I fulfilled it, Myraelin replied. You took his immortality. So I gave him something else. What? A soul made mortal. But free. Velmora screamed, threw her hand forward to strike. But her magic met only light. A wall of silver flame ignited between them. And from the depths of the clearing, the hourglass shattered. The 8th grain rose. The ash turned crimson gold. And Myraelin whispered. Run, Velmora. Why? She spat. Because I've remembered who I am. Far away, deep within her collapsing lair, the black mirrors exploded inward. One by one. 12. Until only one remained. The 13th. Unbroken. Unseen. Waiting. Chapter 19, The First Flame. The fire didn't fade. Even after Velmora fled into shadow, vanishing between trees that screamed with ash and memory, the silver flame continued to burn in the clearing. But it no longer scorched. It healed. At its center, Rhysand sat cross-legged on the ground, mortal now, skin still glowing faintly where magic had carved itself too deep for centuries. His breath was steady. His eyes, no longer crimson, were a deep storm gray. He looked at Myraelin like he'd never seen her before. You rewrote the bond, he said quietly. With light. With will, she corrected. With love. He laughed, raw, disbelieving. Then I think you're the strongest creature I've ever known. No, she said softly. Just the one who remembers the most. They didn't speak much as they walked back to the chapel. The sky above them cracked with streaks of color, reds and golds like bruised dawn. Magic was changing the air. The world felt different, like the curse's grip was slipping from the threads of reality. But Myraelin knew better. This was only a lull. The storm wasn't over. And the final chain still waited. Back in the chapel, she stood before the remnants of the hourglass. 8 grains now floated above the cracked obsidian base, glowing red gold, each one pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. She could feel them inside her. Not like a burden. Like keys. One more, and she would see the final lock. But as she reached out to gather the fragments, the pendant at her throat burned so hot it singed her skin. A whisper filled her ears. The first flame calls you home. Her knees buckled. Rhysand caught her. She didn't black out. She fell inward. Into memory not yet lived. Into the beginning. The 13th life. The first death. The origin. She was on a battlefield. Not of swords, but of words. A war room with high windows, maps inked in blood, and her standing at the head of the table. Not Myraelin. Not Evelyn. Not Soraya or Cerealian. She was Callien, a queen not by crown, but by revolt. General. Strategist. Rebel. And Rhysand? He was not her lover. He was her enemy. A general of the old throne. Bound to a dying king. Sent to crush her resistance. And he nearly did. Until the night he came into her tent, unarmed, and said, "You win." "Then kneel," she told him. "I already have." They fell in love not like fire, but like swords buried together in blood. 2 leaders. 2 enemies. They became lovers when they were supposed to be assassins. And the gods? They watched. And they warned. "This love will end kingdoms," they said. "Then let it," she answered. But the betrayal did not come from him. Not from Rhysand. It came from her court. Her second in command. The one who loved her too much. The one who saw her love for the enemy as treason. They drugged her. They delivered her to the king. And when she woke, she was burning alive on the steps of the cathedral she had built with her own hands. Rhysand arrived too late. He tore the king's head from his shoulders. He burned the city down. And then he knelt in her ashes. And made a vow. "Bring her back, and I will pay any price. Even eternity. Even pain." The gods turned away. But someone else answered. "Velmora. I can give her to you," she said. "But only if she forgets you." Over and over again. "Then let her forget," Rhysand whispered. "So long as she lives. And you? Let me remember." The pact was made. The curse born. The price sealed. And Myraelin's soul. Marked. The vision ended in a scream. Her own. She awoke on the chapel floor, Rhysand holding her tight, his hands bloody from where he'd gripped his own arms too hard. "You saw it," he whispered. She couldn't speak. Just nodded. "I never wanted that to be your first memory," he said. "I never wanted you to remember Callien." "Why?" she choked. "Because it's the truth," he said. "And it's the only life that might break you." She looked at him, something new in her eyes. Not love. Not pain. Resolve. "No," she said. "It doesn't break me." She stood. Looked down at her hand. The 9th grain of ash rose into the air. And for the first time, the ash turned blue. The color of memory before flame. Far away, in the dying throne room, Velmora screamed. The walls cracked. The altar bled. her shadow turned against her. She's remembered Kalien, she whispered. Then it's over, the voice in the dark said. No, Velmora hissed. She stood, her dress unraveling into smoke. Now, we take the final name. Which is? Velmora smiled. The name she never told him. Chapter 20, the name she buried. The blue ash refused to fade. It hovered above her palm like a living thing, shedding faint cold light through the chapel rafters. It didn't glow with warmth or fire, it pulsed like a heartbeat made of frost and memory. Rhysand stared at it. I've never seen it do that, he said. It's not just memory anymore, Myraelin whispered. It's identity. What does that mean? It means the last chain isn't something I forgot. She looked up at him, eyes stormed with certainty. It's something I chose to forget. That night, she didn't sleep. She walked the edges of the chapel grounds with Myrael's notebook in one hand and the shattered hourglass base in the other. The 9 grains floated in a slow orbit around her now, each one glowing a different hue, red, gold, white, ash, blue, memory made visible. But the 10th? It had not risen. And she knew why. I never gave it a name, she said aloud. Rhysand found her before dawn, standing in the overgrown rose garden. The thorns had twisted upward into a dome, enclosing her like a sanctuary of silence. As he stepped through the arch, he paused, sensing something holy. Something final. You know what it is, he said. She nodded. It's the life I never let anyone touch. Not even you. Was it that painful? No, she said. It was the only one that was mine. They sat beneath the thorns. No flames. No visions. Just 2 souls and the weight of a forgotten truth. Myraelin spoke slowly. Carefully. Not like remembering, but like confessing. Before Kalien. Before the rebel queen. Before I met you in any form, there was one other. A first life? Rhysand asked. Yes, she said. The life I was born into before the curse, before the gods, before Velmora. I lived in the mountains. A quiet village. No magic. No throne. Just wind. And language. I was a weaver. Of stories. Rhysand listened, silent. My name was Myraelin, she whispered. It means, soul of wind. I told stories to the dying. I sat beside them and whispered their lives back into the world so they wouldn't be forgotten. That was your gift, Rhysand said. Yes. And that's what made Velmora find me. She stared into the shadows. I refused to tell her story. She came to me, in the final hour of a long war, and demanded I preserve her legacy. She wanted to be remembered as a savior, not a butcher. You said no. I said nothing, Myraelin whispered. I gave her silence. And that was enough to curse you? She said it was betrayal. She said denying her story would erase her from history. A beat. So she erased me. Rhysand took her hand, gently. You never told me, he said. Because I didn't want to be remembered for not telling her story, she said. I wanted to be remembered for surviving it. You did, he said softly. In every form. But Myraelin didn't, she said. She's the one who carried the seed. The first spark. The soul behind every version of me. And I left her unnamed. The pendant at her throat cracked. The ring on her finger flared. And the 9th grain of ash split. Into 2. One blue. One white gold. And rising from the center of her chest, the 10th grain lifted at last. But this one was different. It wasn't ash. It was light. Pure, clear, and pulsing. Rhysand stepped back as the garden glowed silver around them, the thorns curling upward in reverence. "What's happening?" he breathed. "I forgave the world," Myraelin said. "But I never forgave myself." She reached toward the final grain. Touched it. And the air shattered. She stood in her weaver's hut. Fingers dyed with thread. Her mother humming softly. Her brother sleeping beside the hearth. Outside, a snowstorm. Inside, only peace. And then, a knock. Velmora. Drenched. Pale. Eyes wild. "Write me," she demanded. "I don't know you," Myraelin replied. "Then you never will," the witch whispered. And she turned away. Into the storm. But she left a curse behind. "You will live every life, but never yours again." The memory burned away. Myraelin opened her eyes. And she said aloud, for the first time in any life, "I was Myraelin. The one who refused. The one who began this." And the 10th grain of light imploded. Exploding into a ring of symbols in the air. Each one a name she had lived. And at the center, Myraelin. Rhysand stepped forward, tears in his eyes. "You were the beginning," he said. "And now," she replied, "I will be the end." Far below, in the hollow throne room, Velmora fell to her knees. Her hands blistered. The mirrors turned to dust. The room collapsed inward. And the shadow at her side whispered, "She knows everything now." Velmora screamed into the dark. "Then I will be remembered in death." How? By ending her final breath. Chapter 21, The Breaking of the Mirror. The moment she spoke her first name, Myraelin, the earth answered. Not with silence. With grief. The thorns in the rose garden curled into themselves, weeping silver sap. The chapel bells rang without hands. The wind cried through the hollow like the voice of every forgotten life, returning. And the skies? They bled. A crack opened above the valley, wide and blinding. Clouds turned to black fire. And from within the storm stepped Velmora. Not cloaked. Not crowned. Not draped in illusion. But real. And terrible. Her skin had fractured into fault lines of light and darkness, pieces of shattered time embedded into her bones. Her left eye burned gold, her right was a void. Her dress no longer flowed like silk, it crawled, serpentine, across the ground like a living shroud. "You were never meant to remember," she said as she descended upon the garden. "The moment you spoke her name, the spell broke." Myraelin stood unmoved. "It didn't break," she said softly. "It shifted. From a curse, to a reckoning." Velmora snarled. "You think this ends in triumph?" "No," Myraelin whispered. "It ends in truth." The air collapsed. Velmora struck first. She hurled a wall of inverted flame, black fire edged in light, straight at Myraelin. It screamed as it moved, tearing through the trees, melting the rose thorns to bone. But Myraelin stood her ground. She raised her hands. And every grain of memory that circled her heart ignited. The ring of names became a shield. 12 lights, 12 lives, rose in a sphere around her, forming a radiant barrier of the self. Evelyn, Myrae, Ashaera, Soraya, Kasara, Cerealian. Each flame a different color. Each voice a different vow. And at the center, Myraelin. The original fire. Velmora's flame hit the shield. And shattered. She screamed. The world cracked. And out from the trees came Rhysand, mortal now but fearless. He held in his hand the crimson dagger, no longer cursed, but burning with pure soul fire, gifted by Myraelin herself. He ran to her side. "Together," he said. "No," Myraelin said softly. "This part is mine." Velmora moved like a storm now, unfurling shadows shaped like the versions of Myraelin that had died, their faces twisted, hollowed, eyes blind with regret. They rushed her. But Myraelin did not raise her hands. She lowered her heart. She opened it. And in a burst of silver light, every memory became a weapon of forgiveness. The ghosts screamed. And then, smiled. And vanished. "You made weapons from my pain," she said to Velmora. "But I turned them into peace." Velmora dropped to her knees. Cracks formed along her jaw. Her hands began to crumble, flaking into dust. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you forgive me?" Myraelin stepped closer. "Because I am not you," she said. "Because I remember what you tried to become before your name turned to shadow." Velmora's eyes widened. "You remember. You were once a healer," Myraelin said. "A story keeper. Just like me." Velmora's breath hitched. "Before they burned my library," she said. "Before the gods called my name a threat." "That's why you did it," Myraelin whispered. "You cursed me not because you hated me, but because you couldn't bear to be forgotten alone." Tears welled in Velmora's good eye. But it was too late. The light around Myraelin rose. And the final name appeared. The 13th. She who remembers. No longer cursed. No longer broken. Just whole. Velmora reached up. Her hand turned to ash before it could touch Myraelin's cheek. "Tell my story," she whispered. "Only if you're ready to be remembered as you truly were," Myraelin said. Velmora nodded. And faded. Silence returned. But not emptiness. The thorns bloomed again, this time in silver. The sky cleared. And at Myraelin's feet, the hourglass reformed. Not with ash. But with light. The grains fell upward once more. One final time. Rhysand approached her slowly, awe in his gaze. "It's over," he said. Myraelin turned to him. "No," she said. "It's just beginning." She took his hand. And placed the crimson dagger into the ground. A column of white flame rose from the earth. And all across the realm, people woke. From dreams they hadn't known they'd been trapped in. 12 lines of history returned. 13 names written back into the fabric of time. And at the center of them all. Myraelin. The soul of wind. The one who refused. The flame that forgave. Chapter 22, The Breath That Stays. The world did not shatter when the curse broke. It exhaled. In the weeks that followed Velmora's end, the land healed itself in quiet ways. The hollow of names bloomed with wildflowers never seen before. The hourglass trees in the north began to drip silver sap again. And across every village, cathedral, ruin, and river, people awoke with strange dreams, of names they'd never known, lives they'd never lived, and a burning warmth in their chest that refused to fade. The names were not memories. They were echoes. Of lives restored. Of chains undone. Of souls made whole. In the garden of the Rose Chapel, Myraelin stood barefoot beneath a sky she'd watched die and rise a dozen times over. She wore white. Not as surrender. But as remembrance. Her ring no longer burned. It shimmered. Each grain of light from the shattered hourglass now orbited her slowly like stars, forming a constellation only the heart could read. 13 lives. One soul. Chosen. Remembered. Free. Rhysand approached from behind, now fully mortal, yet more radiant than she'd ever seen him. Not because of power, but because of peace. He didn't wear armor. No long coat. No crimson cloak. Just a soft gray tunic, sleeves rolled, his hands calloused from building the new chapel garden with her. "You're staring at the sky again," he said. "It's strange," she said. "I used to fear eternity. Now I wish I could give this day a name so it never fades." "Then give it one," he said, smiling. She turned to him, voice soft. "What would you call it?" Rhysand stepped closer. Took her hand. Pressed his forehead to hers. "Your first breath," he said. "Fully your own." They didn't speak for a long while after. They didn't need to. The silence between them had once been full of loss. Now it was full of life. That night, they lit 13 candles on the chapel steps. One for each name. Each vow. Each death reclaimed as part of her, not a weight against her. As she lit the final candle, Islands, Myraelin whispered, "I forgive myself." The flame flickered. Then danced. Later, in the garden beneath the stars, Rhysand took out the small velvet pouch he had carried across centuries. Inside was the ring. Not the old one, twisted thorns and garnet. But a new one. Silver. Smooth. Set with a pale blue gem that shimmered like all her memories stilled into light. He knelt. No ceremony. No audience. Only them. "Will you stay?" he asked. Myraelin didn't hesitate. "In every life we're given," she said. He placed the ring on her finger. And this time, no curse followed. Only breath. And a kiss. Far away, in the place where old souls go, Velmora sat on the edge of a forgotten mirror. She was no longer cracked. She was no longer crowned. Just a girl. Alone. Until the light reached her. And a voice whispered, "Your story will be told. Truthfully. Gently." And Velmora, once feared, once broken, smiled. And vanished. And so it was written. A soul named Myraelin chose silence, and was cursed. But in the silence, she found names. And in the names, she found flame. She was the one who remembered. The one who loved. The one who survived. Until her final breath. Epilogue, the breath between heartbeats. The sky above the chapel shimmered like it remembered every star Myraelin had once wished upon. It was midsummer. The roses had bloomed too early, as if they, too, couldn't wait any longer for joy. Lanterns floated in the garden pond, 13 in total, one for every vow kept, one for every vow forgiven. And at the center of it all, wrapped in silver dusk, Myraelin stood beneath the arch of memory. She wore no veil. Only a dress the color of starlight, stitched with thread pulled from dreams. In her hand, a letter. Unsealed. Unsigned. But written in her own hand, to herself, to the past versions she had once been. She read it aloud. Voice trembling. But not with fear. With reverence. To the girl who burned. To the woman who wept. To the soul who forgot. You were never broken. You were becoming. And now. I am. She let the letter fall into the wind. It scattered like ash. Then rose like light. At the far end of the garden, Rhysand waited. Not as a prince. Not as a vampire. Not as the Crimson Lord. But as a man who had chosen love again and again, even when it cost him everything. His hands were stained with rose sap and earth. His eyes no longer held the weight of centuries. They held hope. He looked at her like she was a dawn he didn't believe could be real. She walked to him. And for the first time in any life, they met not as halves trying to find each other, but as wholes ready to begin. "You're late," he teased. "I was writing to the dead," she said softly. "Will they answer?" "They already have." He reached for her hand, now marked not just with a ring, but with the faintest shimmer of flame beneath her skin. Not magic. Not curse. Just her. "Do you still remember them all?" he asked. She nodded. "Always. And you still choose me?" "Even when I didn't remember you," she said, "my heart did." He kissed her, slow and deep, as if every name she'd ever carried breathed through her lips. And when the kiss broke, the world sighed. Lanterns lifted into the sky on a wind that smelled like lavender, ink, and silver rain. And in the silence between them, a heartbeat. Then another. And another. Not the echo of survival. Not the ache of love lost. Just life. Shared. Held. Beginning. Far in the distance, a storyteller closed the final page of a long-lost book. Carved into the cover, a name returned to history. Myraelin. And beneath it, in gold. She remembered. She loved. She lived. And she never had to die again. Until her final breath. Which never came.
Every story has an ending, but some mysteries live on. If you enjoyed this tale, don't let it fade into the shadows. Smash that like button and subscribe for more thrilling stories that will transport you beyond the veil of the ordinary. Subscribe to our channel and your name will appear at the beginning of our next video, where we will pleasantly thank you for your subscribing. Tap the bell icon so you never miss a journey into the unknown. Share your thoughts in the comments. What twists did you see coming? And what secrets do you think still remain? Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and let the next story begin.